You are on Tips and Streams with your host, Coca.
What's good, everyone? Welcome back to Tips and Streams. I'm Kokan, and I hope you're doing well and feeling locked in wherever you're listening from. All right, let's get to the daily picks. I've got 4 NBA matchups on the card today, so buckle up. We're diving straight into the action. The first prediction for today's NBA games is for the game between the Utah Jazz and Atlanta Hawks. This matchup in Atlanta screams tempo. Both teams want to run, both teams can put points on the board, and neither team has built a reputation this season for locking people up for 48 minutes. So when I handicap Jazz versus Hawks, I start with one simple idea. Possessions are going to be flying, and the team that survives the defensive breakdowns best usually wins the night. Atlanta comes in playing their best stretch of ball lately, with 5 wins in the last 7 and statement-type results against Miami and Boston. Even without Trae Young, I like how this group has kept its offensive identity. They move the rock, they play with pace, and they manufacture clean looks through constant creation. The numbers back it up. Atlanta is scoring around 117 points per game, shooting well from deep, and they lead the league in assists. That tells me their offense isn't just hot shooting, it's structure. Jalen Johnson has been the engine, filling the box score with points, boards, and playmaking, while CJ McCollum and Nickeil Alexander-Walker give them extra shot-making and downhill pressure. The concern for me is this. Atlanta's defense is not a unit that consistently chokes off runs, and they've been a tricky team to trust when the spread gets big at home. On the Utah side, the story is offense versus chaos. The Jazz can score with anyone. They're putting up about 118 points per game on solid efficiency, and Lauri Markkanen has been playing like a true primary option. When Utah gets into rhythm, they turn games into track meets and dare opponents to keep up. But the other side of the coin is brutal. Utah is giving up about 127 points per game and sits at the bottom of the league in opponent scoring and opponent assists. That's not a small problem. That's a structural problem. Add in a long injury list and the trade turbulence, and it's hard for me to treat Utah like a stable product from tip to buzzer. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in the picture long term, but he's not expected to play here. And Utah is also missing key pieces like Walker Kessler and Keontae George. Now zoom out to the betting angle, because that's where this game gets interesting. Atlanta has not been a reliable home favorite. When the Hawks are laying points in their own building, they've routinely failed to meet the number, falling short by a meaningful margin on average. Utah, meanwhile, has been a profitable spread team overall, even while losing games, because their offense keeps it hanging around. And if the pace is high, a double-digit spread becomes harder to protect. One late Jazz push, one barrage of threes, one stretch where Atlanta gets sloppy with the ball, and suddenly that cushion shrinks fast. Head-to-head history also leans toward competitive scoring environments. These teams have been basically even in points per game against each other historically, and the recent meeting in mid-November finished with both sides getting into the 120s. I'm not saying history predicts tonight, but it supports the idea that Utah can generate enough offense to avoid getting buried if Atlanta's defense gives them oxygen. So here's where I land, and I'm saving it for the buzzer like I always do. I expect Atlanta to control long stretches with ball movement and shot quality. But I also expect Utah to keep answering because they can still fill it up, even shorthanded. My prediction is, here, I'm going to take the Jazz to cover the 11-point spread in the game against the Hawks in Atlanta. Today's second prediction is for the game between the Charlotte Hornets and Houston Rockets. When I look at this matchup in Houston, I see 2 teams that both want the same thing, but they're arriving here from 2 completely different roads. The Rockets are sitting high in the West with a strong home profile, and the Hornets are still chasing from the outside in the East, yet playing like a team that just caught fire and refuses to cool off. And honestly, I don't care what the standings say when a group is stacking wins and playing with real belief. That's when spreads get uncomfortable for the better team. Houston's identity is clear. They're built to control the glass, protect the paint, and turn possessions into a grind. Those rebounding numbers are elite, and when you combine that with rim presence and shot blocking, you usually get a consistent floor at home. But this spot isn't clean. They're missing key bodies, and the rotation holes matter more against a team like Charlotte, because the Hornets don't play polite basketball right now. They play fast, they let it fly, and they've got creators who can stress a defense before it's set. The Rockets' offense still runs through top-end shot making and smart interior play. Kevin Durant being available is obviously massive because he's the kind of scorer who can rescue you when the game gets weird and the spacing breaks down. Sengun does a lot of the heavy lifting too, not just as a scorer, but as a decision maker who can punish switches and keep the ball moving. Add in the steady production from Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr., and I understand why Houston is trusted in this building. But here's where my handicap leans, Charlotte. The Hornets are playing their best ball of the season, and it's not fluky. They're scoring efficiently, they're hitting from deep at a high rate, and they're getting big-time shot creation from the exact spots that travel. Brandon Miller has been in a rhythm, and when he's cooking, Charlotte's offense looks spaced, confident, and dangerous. LaMelo Ball is the engine, and I love how his style bends the game. He speeds you up, he pulls bigs into uncomfortable decisions, and he turns a normal possession into a scramble. And with Con Kneppel providing another reliable scoring option, Charlotte isn't just leaning on one guy to carry the load. I also can't ignore the situational edge. Charlotte has been the hotter team. They've been cashing tickets more consistently lately, and they're walking into this one with momentum that actually shows on the floor. Houston can absolutely win the game, especially if they dominate the boards and keep Charlotte out of transition. But the Hornets don't need to win outright for my angle to make sense. They need to stay within striking distance, keep making threes, and force Houston to execute late, possession by possession, with a shorthanded rotation. So I'm keeping the pick off the opening tip, because this one is going to be about late-game shot creation and who stays fresher when it tightens up. If Charlotte keeps pace with perimeter scoring, and LaMelo controls the tempo in the fourth, that cushion becomes valuable. My prediction: here, my money is on the Hornets to cover the 4-point spread in the game against the Rockets in Houston. The third prediction for today is for the game between the Chicago Bulls and Toronto Raptors. Toronto and Chicago come into this one living in two totally different realities. And when I'm breaking down a spread this size, I'm always asking one question first. Who can actually play clean basketball for 4 quarters? On the Toronto side, I'm seeing a team that has a real identity. They're sitting 30-21, holding a top 4 spot in the East, and they've built that off 2 things that translate night after night: ball movement and defensive discipline. Toronto is near the top of the league in assists per game, which tells me their offense isn't just one guy hunting tough shots. They're sharing it, touching the paint, and making defenses rotate. And on the other end, they're allowing about 112 points per game, with a defensive style that forces mistakes and turns possessions into chaos. That matters a lot against a team trying to reassemble itself on the fly. Now, I'm not ignoring the red flag. Toronto is on the second night of a back-to-back. That's the spot where legs get heavy, transition defense gets sloppy, and a favorite can sleepwalk into a closer than expected finish. Toronto also hasn't been great at covering numbers with no rest this season, and if you watch that recent loss where they let a big lead slip late, you know they can go cold at the worst time. But then I look at Chicago, and I can't get to a place where I trust the structure. The Bulls are 24-27. They've dropped 5 of their last 6, and the roster has been shaken up hard. Key pieces are gone, and other important names are either out or floating in uncertainty. When a team is dealing with that much change, you usually see it in the details. spacing that's a beat late, help defense that's half a step slow, and empty trips where nobody knows who the possession belongs to. Chicago can score, but their defense has been leaking badly, giving up close to 120 points per game. And that's the kind of profile that makes it tough to hang around on the road, especially in a building where Toronto can feed off energy. Stylistically, I also like Toronto here. If the Raptors can pressure the ball and create turnovers, they'll get the easy points that separate games from tight battle into double-digit cushion. Chicago's best path is to slow the tempo, protect the ball, and force Toronto into half-court execution. Because when Toronto gets stuck grinding, the offense can stall. The problem is that the plan requires cohesion, and right now, Chicago looks like a group still learning the script. So I'm keeping the pick in my pocket until the buzzer. But everything I'm seeing points to Toronto being the side that can actually play a complete game at home. My prediction, here I'm picking the Raptors to win and cover the 7-point spread against the Bulls in Toronto. I'm riding with the cleaner defense, the steadier rotation, and the home team's ability to create separation with stops when Chicago's offense starts searching for answers. Today's last prediction is for the game between the San Antonio Spurs and Dallas Mavericks. This Texas matchup in Dallas is one of those spots where the record tells one story, but the setting tries to sell you another. The Mavericks are sitting at 19-31, and they have not been able to stop the bleeding lately, dropping 5 straight. Meanwhile, San Antonio is rolling at 33-16, playing like a team that expects to win every night, not just compete. And when I look at how these teams have been trending, I see a clear edge that lines up perfectly with the number. Let me start with the Spurs, because the foundation is real. They are putting up 116.9 points per game while shooting 47.3% from the floor. And they are doing it with structure, not chaos. They share it well enough, they rebound, and they are not a sloppy team. Defensively, they are giving up 111.9 per game and holding opponents to 45.6% shooting, which tells me they are not just outscoring teams, they are controlling the game flow. That matters in a road spot like this because it travels. And when I think about what San Antonio brings to the table here, I keep coming back to size, discipline, and the ability to win possessions. In their last outing, they handled Orlando 112-103, and what stood out to me was how they created extra chances. 48 rebounds, 8 offensive boards, 8 steals, and 15 forced turnovers. That is Spurs basketball when they are locked in. Victor Wembanyama did what he does, giving them 25 points on efficient shooting. And the bigger point for me is that he does not need a perfect game to tilt the entire court. His presence changes what Dallas can run at the rim, and it changes how confident Dallas feels attacking the paint late in the clock. Now flip it to Dallas. The Mavericks have talent, but the situation is messy. They are still trying to find consistency while dealing with a reshaped roster, and it shows up in the results and in the way games feel. They are scoring around 114 per game on the season, but defensively, they are allowing 116.6, and that is a problem against a Spurs team that can score in multiple ways. Dallas also has a rebounding issue on the defensive end, sitting near the bottom of the league in boards allowed per game. And when you give a team like San Antonio second chances, you are basically inviting a run. The one reason Dallas fans can talk themselves into this is Cooper Flagg, because he is fully capable of putting up a monster line, and we have seen it. He went for 34 points and 12 rebounds against Houston, and he was efficient doing it. But here is where I get stubborn. One-star cooking does not automatically cash a spread when the rest of the structure is leaking. Dallas lost that Houston game anyway, even while shooting well from deep, because the Rockets got 18 offensive rebounds and Dallas could not consistently win the physical possessions. That is the exact kind of math that gets you beat by a better team, even at home. And we cannot ignore the head-to-head angle. San Antonio has already shown they can walk into this building and blow the doors off, and they have won and covered the last 2 meetings. That is not a coincidence to me. It tells me the Spurs have answers for Dallas, and it tells me Dallas has not solved the size, the pace control, or the way San Antonio turns stops into clean offense. I also like how the trends support a controlled Spurs performance. San Antonio has been reliable against the spread in this type of rhythm spot, and even with the back-to-back context, I trust their identity more than I trust Dallas to suddenly look organized for 48 minutes. Dallas is shorthanded and still juggling lineups, while San Antonio has a clear hierarchy and a defensive anchor that erases mistakes. So I am not rushing my call early, but once I stack the full scouting report, the matchups, the form, and the possession battle, I land in one place. Here, my final pick for the game is the Spurs to win and cover 5.5-point spread in the game against the Mavericks in Dallas.